Hey there, people. It is me, Jones, or you can call me Tamugi. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Tyranids. What do we do with the Nerf? Yes, the biggest problem we have right now is Leviathan Warriors ban list is finally gone. But the bigger question lies ahead. What do we do next? Where do we house the Warriors? What do we pick with the secondaries? And how do we write a new list? All that and more in this episode of me blabbling shit for 10 minutes straight. Alright, hopefully it's only gonna be 10 minutes, so let's make this quick. Right, so let's start with the secondaries. First, you want to take random down, assassination will bring it down. Now, this is quite obvious. This is the kill secondaries. You want to pick these secondaries because Tyranids still have a lot of killing power. You have the killing power of both Tyrants. You have killing power of Warriors. You still have powers to kill stuff with. So, grind, assassination, bring it down. One of these are still going to be pretty good. If you want to pick both at the same time simultaneously, that's also pretty good. That can replace one of your shadow operations if you want to, but that's not mandatory. I will say just pick one of those. Most of your opponent, if they're anyone that's worth a damn, will probably write their list in a way that you won't get too much point out of assassination or bring it down, especially bring it down. Okay, now assassination you can probably still get 3 points, three characters killed. That will still give you like 10 points if you kill their warlord as well, which is also a very decent pick, but not good enough. Grandin down is kind of tricky, but if you spec your list right, you can get Grandin down kind of easy, but it's not going to be too much of a point. Grandin down is also still going to get you about in the neighborhood of 9 to 12 points. It's not going to give you the full 15, there's no way. Unless your opponent plays very poorly. Otherwise, Grandin down is looking at like 6 to 9 points at best. Okay, assassination is gonna give you the same, pretty much on the neighborhood of 6 to 9 points, which is not a lot. Bring it down is going to be quite obvious if you see a list like that. Say if you're fighting against Imperial Knights, then obviously pick bring it down. Or if you're fighting against like a monster match or Imperial Guards with a lot of vehicles, then yes, take bring it down. Otherwise, moving on. Second interrogation, we don't have a lot of options here. Okay, I know second interrogation has been like not so good because like people are starting aware that second interrogation is a very easy 15 points. So even non-psychic army like Custodes or Mechanicus, okay, that's not pretend Mechanicus is still alive. They bring Inquisitors just to counter your second interrogation. So you gotta watch out for those. Okay, second interrogation, you can still get points for this, but you have to be very careful on where you move your stuff so you don't get denied when you're trying to cast second interrogation. Moving on, we have raise the banner or retrieve Nephilim data. This is the shadow operation that I talked about. Now, raise the banner are obviously going to be good on maps like over here. Recover the relics. You have like 6 objectives, and 2 of them are very close to your deployment zone. This is a very good one. Also, you have title conviction, which is pretty much the same idea. You have 2 objectives that are very close to your deployment zone, and you can easily defend it. So you can raise the banner here, here, and here, and you can get a lot of point out of that. Other than that, the rest of the map are not so good, are not so friendly on raise the banner, especially like the map on Unscarring, or maps like Conversion and Death and Zeal. Those are not so good for raise the banner because you can't have easy access to the midfield banner compared to all the other maps we just talked about. Or the maps are so heavily contested in midfield, for instance, abandoned sanctuaries or the Scry salvage data Scry salvage. These maps have points in the middle that is heavily contested all the time. Raise the banner is just not going to be worth it. You're going to spend most of the time just plant the banner and then replant the banner over and over again. You'll be wasting your troops' effectiveness over time, so let's not do that. Yeah? R&D is an interesting one. Now, the reason why Tyranid are struggling with secondaries in general is because the Leviathan Warrior spam does not like to do retrieve Nephilim data, and here's why. Warriors are usually taken in a group of 5 or taken in a group of 9. All right, a huge group of warriors. Now, if you want to expand that group of warriors for a single turn just to retrieve a data, that's going to be okay in turn 1 because everyone's hiding anyway. But starting from turn 2, it becomes a liability. Now, your warriors wants to shoot, your warriors want to charge, your warrior want to control the board. They don't want to be sitting in a place to retrieve data. Okay, so that's not going to be that good for warriors. So what do we do with this? We're going to talk about this later, how we're going to engineer our list to successfully to do all these secondaries. Okay, so here it is. Here is the sample way to build Tyranid list right now. That it's still going to be double patrol detachment with 2 Hive Tyrants, one with a Sharklet, that's a walk runt, and another fly runt with a Reaper Obliterax is still very good. You want to take that. 3 Tyrant Guard to stop Hive Tyrant from getting shot at. Zoanthrope for the Selective Imperative. Valanthropes in general are just a very good defensive unit, and also the only source you have in the entire army to make sure the opponent fight lasts. Obviously, it triggers on the 3+, but still, that's the only source you have as Tyranids to make your opponent fight last. Now, the Neothorpe is obviously going to be there because you need someone to hand out a 3d6 casting and pick the highest result. So there it is. This is the minimum, okay? This is the bare bone minimum requirement for any Tyranid list. Now, for any players who's been paying attention out there, you can see, oh, well, hey, Tsumugi, there's like no fucking troop. Where's your troop, right? The reason why I don't put troops here yet is because we have to discuss what kind of troop we want to take, all right? Because that's what matters. Back then, it just used to be, oh, just spam warriors, like no question asked, just spam as many warriors as you possibly can. But now Leviathans are dead, we're not going to play Leviathan anymore, so how do we deal with this? The way I look at it, warriors are still a very good, decent core unit for your army. There are a couple ways you can do this, and it really depends on what Hive fleet you're picking. If you're picking like a Kraken Hive fleet, I think, personally, 9 warrior upgrade build is still going to work, and here's why, okay? So, let's start with Kraken. Okay, let's take Kraken out here. There we go. Let's start with Kraken. So for Kraken, you have +1 AP in melee if you charge. And the second adaptive is D3 plus 3 inches when you advance. But that's kind of useless because you can just replace it with Fetal Hunt. Usually I give it +1 to charge. That's because you already have 1 CP to give you advance 8 and still ignore hit penalties on your weapons. So why the heck not? Also, when you cast Onslaught, you already ignore hit penalties. But the one we're going after is this 8-inch advance, which is really good. This is very good advance. So if you take a group of 9 warriors and you give them like all the upgrades, well, not technically all, but like just Adrenal Glands, okay? Adrenal Glands, you probably don't need Toxin Sac, but if you want to, you can if you want, but you don't have to. So take all the upgrades on a single group of warrior. What you do is like a Blood Angel or like a Bloody Rose-esque playstyle. So what happens is you buff the warriors up before you send them out. So in your command phase, you take Hive Tyrants, give them reroll hit rolls of 1, and if you really have a CP to spare, which you probably wouldn't, but like if you really do, you can spend this one last CP right here to give your Hive Tyrant over here another Warlord trait, which is going to be direct guidance, and then give them +1 to hit. So now your warriors now hit on 2+, and then they have the ability to reroll hit rolls of a 1, so they have a very high efficiency when it comes to shooting and melee. And when they finally get into melee, they have +1 AP. So their Bone Sword now becomes Strength 8, AP 3, and Damage 2. Alright. You cast Onslaught on Warriors, give them Onslaught, give them 5+ Fear Pain, the Catalyst, and then boom, there they go. You just shoot them out like a ballistic missile, and then just trash whatever you want on the opponent's deployment zone, okay? So you send out a warrior, let them kill stuff. Yes, the warrior is going to die eventually, but that's okay. You already flipped the objective of your opponent's base, and that's what you're going after, okay? You want to flip the objectives with the warriors, because the warrior has OPSEC, and they have enough destructive power to make sure whatever is guarding your opponent's deployment zone objective is going to be flipped by your warriors, okay? And then you can do this twice in a game, okay? So you can do this once over here, you can do it once again over here, so you have 2 chances to do this, and that you will still have some point to spare, okay? Even with like 2 groups of 9 warriors, you can have like 380 point-ish to spare, and if you really want to, you can take like a 3rd group of warrior, but I wouldn't do that, because that's just, first, it's really boring, but second, that's also very limiting on where you can hide your stuff, especially if you're playing on the ITC table where you have very limited terrain, and it's player plays terrain, then you probably can't hide all 9 warriors. Then you gotta think about what you want to take next, right? So you have some points to spare that you can take. Now, this is Kraken, okay? So for Kraken, it's pretty straightforward. You want to go melee. You want to go wide, go melee. Okay, so your Tyrant, your Flyrants with Reaper is going to be attacking on AP5. Okay, it's not going to be AP4, it's going to be AP5. And your war is going to be attacking AP3. So that's pretty good. So versus AOC army, Armor Contempt, that's straight up very good. So this is Kraken. This is how I will build Kraken. You can obviously fill the rest of the point with like 2 Harpies if you want to. I think 2 Harpies are going to be pretty good, even though Harpies don't exactly melee that much, so it might not work in Kraken. But Harpies in general, since they move fast and they move into opponent's space, and if you attempt to shoot this warrior missile starting from turn 1, then you can actually have a very destructive force in your opponent's space that the mid board is going to be controlled by you because your opponents are too busy dealing with the 2 Harpies and the warriors that you shoot out, okay? And if you have some point left over, if you really do, or you prefer not to play Harpies and you want to do the secondaries like Raise the Banner and R&D, I strongly recommend to take another group of Termagants or Gargoyles. It depends on what you have or the models you have, okay? It can be Gargoyles, it can be Termagants, it doesn't matter. All that matters is you want to take a 10 model, Gargoyles. You want to take a group of 10 models and then put them in reserve. Now, both Termagants and Gargoyle cost 4 power level per unit. So that means if you put them together, that's 8 power level, which is just enough with 1 CP to put them into strategic reserve. Whereas with 1 CP, you can put both units into strategic reserve. They can come out from the side of the map and perform R&D as you wish. In the turn, for the first 2 turns, or for turn 1 and turn 4, you can do it with your warriors, no problem. For turn 2 and turn 3, you can do it with your Termagants or Gargoyles, and then you get the full points on R&D. Alright? So that's probably what the Kraken list is going to look like. So let's move on to the next one. The next one I want to talk about is the Behemoth list. The Behemoth list is quite interesting. Okay, so let's put this right here. Here. So this is the Behemoth list I wrote. This is going to be a very pressuring list to play against anyone that does not have any sort of decent anti-tank, okay? So for anyone that's been preparing to fight against Eldar or Necron, this is not going to be a good news for them because this list has a lot of obstacle, okay? So for starters, for Behemoth, right? Let's look at what Behemoth does. Let's copy this shit over here, paste it over here. So let's look at Behemoth. Now, Behemoth is Lurk and Hunt. So the Hunt is generally not so good overall. Lurk is probably the one that's more thought after because the naturalized camouflage and territory instincts are both very good. For lists like this, I will probably pick territory instincts for Carnifexes because I have 2 Tyrants with Carnifex. That's also going to be very good. Now, for Behemoth, what it does is it kind of spreads out the pressure of the warriors. So you can see in this list, I have taken 20 warriors, but in a group of 5. And I do not give them Adrenal Gland upgrade. I only give them Venom Cannon. And here's why. Behemoth already have +1 to strength in melee. If you charge with your sword will go from strength 7 into strength 8. You don't need Adrenal Glands in the first place, and that will shave a lot of point off from warriors. That's pretty good. And in a group of 5, it's much cheaper to activate the -1 to damage stratagem, where the upkeep is like 5 warriors. If anything higher than that, you need to spend 2 CP. But for anything for 5 or less, it's just 1 CP. So that's also very good. And then you have 4 Carnifexes with just Tusk. That's 250 points. You can take Screamer Killer if you want to, but if you do that, you might have to shave off more points from there. And since you have 4 groups of warriors, you can probably perform actions like Spore Node. Okay, Spore Node is... I used to consider Spore Nodes to be a trap, but then I realized if you're playing a pressure list like this, your opponent don't have too much time to worry about your warriors, okay? Especially if they have more things to worry about, like Carnifexes. Carnifexes are much more dangerous than warriors, and since your warriors in the group of 5, and even if they're trying to attack it, you can easily pop 1 CP to activate -1 damage, and you have Venom Throat to provide a -1 to hit. All good, alright? All is good, okay? So this is a behemoth list that I highly recommend if you want to play behemoth, if you want to play Carnifex, and if you still have warriors left over you want to play with, this is a list you want to play. You can get the most out of behemoth. The reason why I don't take the little bugs like Termagants and Hormagants in this list, or even Gargoyles, is because I believe the +1 strength is going to be such a waste on them. They are better off to play in Kraken list, where they can advance faster, okay, advance faster, and then the warriors can focus on taking down the major part of the opponent, since you can stack all the buff on top of them. But for behemoth, this kind of playstyle, your tyrants are never going to run out of core unit to buff. They can always give them reroll hit rolls of 1. There's like Carnifexes, the warriors. There's always something to give. Okay, your tyrants are going to be very busy trying to handing out all these buffs, so that's pretty good. Also, Behemoth has a built-in reroll charge. Obviously, you're going to lose this if you pick the Territorial Instinct, but if you don't need Obstack, say if you're playing against like Custodes, where they have like very bad Obstack game, then you probably don't need that. Then you can go for the reroll charge. Reroll charge is going to be pretty good, okay? Or you're fighting against like a gunline army like Tau, you really need to reroll that charge, then yes, you can pick this as well. Tau is also pretty bad on the Obstack game, then yeah, the reroll charge. But unfortunately, you cannot change your adaptive based on your opponent, so it really depends on your local meta. If your local meta has a lot of Tau players, keep the reroll charge. If not, just take the Territorial Instinct, alright? And you have second power to give them +1 to wound. That's also going to be very useful, especially for Carnifexes, because Carnifex does not have a lot of strength. Okay, it has a strength of 6, and with Behemoths, it becomes strength 7, which is quite decent. But if you're targeting like toughness 8 unit, it's still not going to be enough. This is when the +1 to wound power comes in. So you can take out a high toughness unit with warriors, because their strength is 8. You'll wound most toughness 8 models on 4+. And then +1 to wound becomes 3 up, so that's pretty good, alright? And then you have the CP to fight on death on infantry. Now, this will cost 2 CP on non-swarm unit, so regardless of how many models you have in the warrior squad, it will always cost 2 CP to fight on death, which is not going to be worth it, and I'm not going to use this CP whatsoever, so I'm just going to play Behemoth for the +1 strength, and the +1 to wound second power, and that's pretty much it, okay? And that's Behemoth. For the rest of the high fleet, I think I don't want to write a list about it. I just want to quickly talk about it. So let's start with the one at the bottom. So let's start with Hydra, right? So for Hydra, if you have more models than your opponent, you get +1 to hit, which seems to be okay for warriors, because warriors are usually a group of 9. If you take a group of 9 warriors and then you charge a target, say you're charging against like a intercessor or whatnot, right? Or like Terminators, unless it's like a 10-man block Terminator. Otherwise, you're gonna have that +1 to hit, which is always going to be very useful. So you don't have to, you don't have to spend that 1 CP for direct guidance. You almost always, or you don't have to spend 1 CP on a flash hook for the +1 to hit. So yeah, for Hydra, if you just charge, that's +1 to hit, and you can spend 1 CP to reroll all wound rolls if you have more models than your opponent does, which seems to be quite useful. Except that for Hydra, I think it's a very tricky way to play. The thing it provides is okay. It's not bad, okay? +1 to move and +3 to consolidate is nothing to scoff at either. It's pretty good. Especially if you take like a large group of warriors, then this can potentially be okay. This can be pretty good. But not so much on everything else. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to write lists like this, because maybe Carnifexes, maybe like very similar to like Behemoth, where if you charge with Carnifex, because monsters creature count as 5 models when it comes to calculating like if you have more models than your opponent does. Maybe take like the Carnifexes and take like a group of 9 warriors. I think it's gonna be like Kraken style, like a Kraken style, shoot the missile forward and then just continuously to get that +1 to hit and attack the right target all the time to ensure you have +1 to hit and reroll all wound rolls with 1 CP. Okay, and then there's a power to do mortal wound based on a model count, which is kind of interesting, but it's not that important, so I'm gonna skip it. Kronos was actually going to be one of the top choices I was going to put in this video, but after thinking about it long and hard, yeah, just like the Venom Cannon, I concluded it to be sort of mediocre, and here's why. The reason why the Cronus was considered in the first place is because it has lurk when it comes to adaptive physiology. I was thinking about putting naturalized camouflage with a lurk with warriors in like a MSU style warriors, and you have like three unit, you have a three model unit, and they just like scatter across the map, and they all have one Venom cannon. They're sitting across cover and just shoot your opponent into shits, right? That was what I was planning to do, until I read that the +1 AP on shooting only happens when you're shooting at target within half of your maximum weapon range, which happens at 12 inches for Death Spitter and 18 inches for Venom Cannon. So not so good, all right, not so good. Also, the +1 strength to shooting weapon does not really affect on warrior that much because Death Spitter is already strength 5. Making a strength 6 doesn't really break any sort of threshold. Same thing goes with Venom Cannon. I guess you could argue that Venom Cannon with strength 8 in turn to strength 9, it could potentially punch through strength toughness 8 models. But you don't have that many Venom Cannon. You only have one Venom Cannon per squad. Okay, per 3 models, obviously. Sorry, my bad. So there's not going to be that many Venom Cannons, so the +1 strength to shooting weapon on the squad of 9 warriors is just not going to be that worth it. So that's why I think Cronus is it's an interesting pick, but I think there's better. Okay, there's better version of it. Which comes to Yormagon. I think Yormagon is going to be a hot contender besides Behemoth and Kraken. And the reason is because the -1 to hit outside 12 inches is just like very good, okay? Well, technically it's not -1 to hit. It's dense cover, alright? Where dense cover is -1 to hit, yes, but it does not stack with, if you're already behind dense cover, it does not stack multiple times. So it's just dense cover, alright? What it does is actually stacks with Venom Throw, because Venom Throw is -1 to hit, and Yormagon is dense cover. Now, obviously, -2 is not going to go through, but if your opponent has +1 to hit, you will neutralize one of their +1 to hit, and they will still end up being -1 to hit in the end. After all the add and subtract, it'll still be -1 in the end. So Yormagon can potentially be pretty good if you're fighting against faction with very high +1 to hit and shooting. I'm looking at you, Tau, right now. Marker Light, yeah. Marker Light gives you +1 to hit. Well, guess what? I'm in dense cover. It's -1 to hit. So doesn't matter if you're Marker Light or not. You will still be shooting at 5+ to hit, right? So that's pretty good. Also, the secondary adaptive is really bad. You can almost always switch this out for lurk. I will probably switch this to naturalized camouflage. If you're fighting against like a shooting-based army, that's like in the shooting-based meta, I'll most likely pick naturalized camouflage. Territory instinct, not so much, but because you probably don't want to take that many monsters in Yormagon. I'll probably just take like warriors in like MSU and then just like have them run across the map, put them in cover, and -1 to hit, be very effective, and taking the advantage of cover and dense cover and all that stuff, And yeah, and once ability strike anything. So Yormagon, I think it's a decent choice if you want to play warriors, but you don't want to play in a huge group together. If you're fighting against like a local meta with a lot of Tau, Yormagon is going to be a good pick. If you're fighting against Marines, then Kraken is going to be a good pick. If you're fighting against anything else in general, Behemoth is going to be an okay pick. Yeah, that's pretty much what I think about the Kraken. I'm sorry, Tyranid status right now. So, in conclusion, I think warriors are still very good. You can't just remove them. For 30 points per model, having OBSAC, having free weapon upgrades, and with that stat line, you just can't remove them. You still have to take them. It's like the way we take them is a little bit more different. For instance, in Behemoth, you don't take them in a group of 9, you take them in a group of 5, and that's because you don't want you can save some point from the adrenal glands, so they will still have +1 to strength in melee with their passive ability. Whereas Kraken, you want to put them in a group of 9s because you can shoot them out like a missile, and then they can just put out destructive power on their opponent because they have better AP in melee. They have better ways to reach your opponent with 1 CP. They can advance 8 inches and still charge with onslaught. That's all good, right? So this is what I think about how Tyranid should build this from now on. What do you guys think about? Do you guys think I'm right, or think I'm wrong, or you have even better idea? Let me hear about it, and I hope to see you guys soon. And this is Tsumugi signing out. Goodbye!